Hi there, Namaste from India. Today we are going to read another book that I have for you. This is The Courage to be Disliked. We already read it 5 on 5 stars. Then we were reading No Rules. I gave it 3 stars out of 5 because it was not that dramatic. I was thinking it would have been. It would be, not would have been. Oh. Sometimes your grammar just goes out of the. So, the surprise. Can you read it? The rudest book ever. Yes, the rudest book ever. I would like you to see how exactly they have designed the book. Ta-ta-da. Can you read the front line? What does it say? It says, read only if you are prepared to get your feelings hurt. Okay. So this is the rudest book ever. It is written by Shwetab Gangwar, another YouTuber. And today we are going to read this book. Okay. Chapter 1 says, you are a product. Oh, who would like to hear that they are a product? Hey buddy, how are you doing? Aren't you glad that you bought this book? Well, we are going to go on a journey together. And as long as you are reading this book, I will be your friend. And the only case in which this doesn't apply is if you illegally downloaded this book. In which case, fuck you. This book is about insanely practical ideas to free you from your bullshit. Let me start by saying this. A lot of this was supposed to be your parents' job. I'm not going to say anything bad about your parents. All I'm saying is, if people were products, then what we see around us are really shitty ones. So clearly, parents are royally fucking up their jobs. Let me give you an introduction of the world you have been brought into. Okay, now we are getting an introduction of the world. He is rude, isn't he? But he is very sweet as well. I mean, people who tells you on your face that they are going to be rude are the sweetest people I have found. That they actually care about your feelings. Even when they are in the denial that I don't care about your feelings. But somewhere they do care about our feelings. Okay, let me give you an introduction of the world you have been brought into. The world doesn't give a flying fuck about you. This world is a place full of people that will come in the form of friends, lovers, well-wishers, in the form of emotional adhesives, neatly packaged dreams and aspirational lollipops, in the form of saviors, fixers and salespersons. We are going to talk about them all. Anyway, when the time comes, a lot of them will take complete advantage of you, rid you of your emotional innocence and turn your world upside down. It will most definitely happen. History tells you that. No matter who you are or what you do, rich, talented, genius, pretty, strong, powerful, polite, kind or careful. So do you feel prepared? Let's start with you. You are a product. You are a product with hope attached to it. What does that mean? It means that one day you are meant to become this awesome functional unit capable of choosing jobs, career, relationships, environments, and economies on your own volition. That's the hope. The better the choices, the better the product you are. That's the simple law on the basis of which the world judges you. So here are few things about you. A person is not born ready. A person is made to be ready. The person is emotional in nature. The person doesn't know how to learn in the beginning. It knows how to absorb, which means it learns whatever it absorbs from its surroundings. I am talking about when you were a kid. The person has to learn how to learn. The person can think but does not know how to think, which is why it cannot learn how to learn. This may be confusing, but it will become clearer later in the book. A person's emotional response to different experiences create interpersonal of those experiences, which the person assumes to be true. Therefore, emotional responses becomes one of the earliest teacher of the person. Okay, emotional responses are the teachers, earliest teachers of the responses. Nice. Emotional responses is a garbage teacher because as a kid the emotional intelligence is underdeveloped. Okay. Because the person learns by absorption, the parents and the surroundings becomes the other teachers. Instead of teaching the person how to think, parents and surrounding teach what to think, thereby become terrible teachers themselves. Teaching what to think stops the product from learning how to think, and since the person doesn't learn how to think, it grows up to be confused and clueless regarding how to deal with this world. In conclusion, the product is very likely to be screwed. The product is you. Uh-oh. Nobody is born an idiot. Okay, so we are idiots, but we were not born that way. We were intelligent beings. I hope that's what he's saying. He's being cute right now. Okay, you may have said this on many occasions in your life. People are fucking idiots. But nobody is born an idiot. We unknowingly choose to be idiots because we are not taught the methodologies of how to think. When devoid of the knowledge, people unconsciously view that they have learned from parents, surroundings, and emotional responses as factual learnings. As you grow older and life becomes harder without the ability of how to think, one natural fallback on what one knows, which strengthens these factual learnings even more, so much so that at a certain age they can become unchangeable ideas, biases, prejudices, and practices that the individual can no longer abandon. Now you may be thinking, what the fuck is he talking about? Factual learning, how to think, what to think. Here is an example. Imagine growing up in a place where you only interacted with people of one group. Now also imagine the group of people having a very strict single belief, strict ideologies, and strict doctrines on morality, how to live your life, what decent and what's not. Now on the top of that, also imagine that they have notions which are not so kind about people of other groups or other belief systems, or even about when you teach the children to think exactly like that. It would be called teaching somebody what to think makes sense. If you are growing up with such teachings, those would be called factual learnings because they may appear factual to you but aren't necessarily so. They are based on fear and ignorance. So, but this book is good. I hope you buy this book. This book is the rudest book ever, and somewhere it gives you what exactly you should think about or how you should think. That is what he is teaching, how you should think. Okay. So with time, when they are not corrected by verification, these factual learnings become factual truth to people. Factual truth means they are incontestable to those who believe them, and they most probably will die by them. And once you believe something that strongly, you become its avid defender. Once we become defenders, we become groups. Once we become groups, we disagree with other groups and fight and vote and celebrate and denigrate on behalf of whichever ideas align most closely to our factual truths. The type of products around you, based on people who are taught how to think and people who are taught what to think, these are the results. A person brought up to what to think tends to follow ideas, ideologies, and ways of living that echoes a relationship with familiarity. We do so because we feel safe with familiarity. Whatever is familiar to you is known to you well, so you are most comfortable with it. So we are comfortable with whatever is familiar to us. A person brought up on how to think tends to question, filter, and may abandon ideas, ideologies, and way of living that echoes a relationship with familiarity. Familiarity, although safe, does not guarantee soundness. A person brought up on what to think. He is an intelligent person. I mean, the way he is writing, it's really good. The writing is very simple, so you are going to be able to follow the whole book, because I am reading the book and I can see that the writing is very simple, and the ideas are, I mean, like, he has constructed ideas in one and one sentences. So every sentence give you an idea what exactly you have to absorb while reading this book. So I think because of that reason I should give 4 stars to this book, and you should definitely read this book. So a shout out to Shetab Gangwar. A person brought up what to think feels to tend threatened by alien ideas, things, or people, which may end up pushing them towards what they know and are familiar with. A person brought up on how to think when confronted by alien ideas on people takes an interest in understanding and figuring them out. At the same time, they also inspect the first impressions and then their mind created. They are not threatened because practicing how to think over the years creates curiosity and an investigative attitude. Therefore, any person, thing, or idea that is alien becomes food for thought. A person brought up on what to think inclines towards asking for solutions for their problems. Instead of thinking and finding out things by themselves, this explains the insatiable need for self-help books, the lack of self-reliance, and the explosion of clever people online, teaching people how to be successful, to be a man, a millionaire, a strong woman, smart, clever, slick, handsome, and a beautiful all at once. The person who knows how to think will try to find solutions for their problems by thinking on their own, using methods of reasoning with consideration to mental harmony and bringing smoothness in the functioning of their life. To expand the scope of their knowledge, however, they will read books, with watch videos, and consume all available information. They seek knowledge because knowledge contains perspectives, and the cultivation of how to think requires a collection of as many perspectives as one can gather. Lastly, a person who hasn't brought up on what to think still functions just the same way as people who were taught what to think. It happens because one can be deprived of parental guidance, but that is only one of the teachers. The other teachers, such as surroundings and their emotional responses, still teach them what to think. Basically, how to think cannot be self-taught during the development years of a person. You may cite a few exceptions, but this book isn't about exceptional people. It's about people. Your parents probably messed up. Why parents largely producing products that are unprepared to face the challenges of this world? That is the huge question. Let me repeat the question. Why are parents largely producing products that are unprepared to face the challenges of this world? It is a very important question, also a fantastic one. It is both important and fantastic because it sits on the assumptions that all parents wants to become parents in the first place. People who become parents are mentally prepared to be parents. People who become parents are mentally fit to be parents. Do you know how many reasons there are for having a child? One can become a parent because the guy forgot to pull out, or the girl, out of some ancient primitive urge, commanded the guy not to pull out, or he believed he had to pull out because the results said otherwise. People have babies because they like babies, or because they have recently been feeling a sense of incompleteness, or because they hope it will make their lives purposeful again. People have babies because they have reached the age society has deemed right to have a baby. People have babies because it appears to be a viable strategy to save their marriage, or because one of the parents wants to have a baby and the other complies. People have babies so the baby can grow up to fulfill the unfulfilled dreams of either of the parents. There is a great chance that you might have been born from one of those reasons. Ideally speaking, there should be a strategy. You are bringing a fucking life into this world, and that person is gonna grow and contribute in many ways to this world. They are gonna vote, follow ideologies, make people money, which is what a job is. Find love, marry, and do a lot of other things like write shitty poetry in their teens. If they are not responsible person, they are gonna be hurting a lot of people, and if they grow up to be a douchebag, you are indirectly responsible for hurting all other people that douche is going to hurt. If they grow up to be a follower of ideologies that talk about dividing people, then the parents are too responsible for creating one more follower. Why so many shitty products? The question is how much forethought goes in the mind of parents before having a baby about the baby. If the prime motivation is a baby is a cute little thing that will change our lives, well, that is not good enough. There is a high possibility that your kid gonna be creating another moron on the planet. That you are gonna be creating another moron on this planet. A kid ain't gonna figure shit out by themselves. If they are gonna be able to, then somebody will use that and make them their followers, and that somebody will probably not give as much of a shit about the kid as the parent would. Unfortunately, this is what happens in most of the cases. People learn shitty ideas from surroundings, parents, and their own underdeveloped emotional intelligence. And why? And with this, they enter the world. See, again, if somebody is underdeveloped and their emotional intelligence is underdeveloped, and you can see that, okay, that particular person is my mother or that particular person is my father, but their emotional intelligence is underdeveloped, then whatever the hell you have absorbed after observing them, you should negate that. Now this is the time for you to negate that, for you to get detached from that, because that is not helping you guys. That is literally not helping you. If the person has underdeveloped emotional intelligence, that is not going to help you out at all. And this is why they enter this world. Now there is a thing called responsible motivation, which sounds like we are creating a human. Are we mentally fit and prepared to create a person whom we will be solely responsible? If not, shall we not start to upgrade our thoughts, perception, perspectives, create multiple storage of knowledge, which in time will cater to the young person's curiosity and impact the overall development of the personality? Responsible motivations means parents realizing that they will have one of the strongest influences with the while the foundation of the personality of the child is being laid, and to prepare the child, the parents will have to prepare themselves first. Unfortunately, parents on this planet aren't so big on this one. Should all parents be geniuses? Then fuck no, I'm not saying that. I realize parents have shit to do. They have jobs, the relationship, finances to manage, and a house to take care of. I realize that they also have to watch television, talk about politics, but more stuff, make room for the baby. Drink tea, fight, argue, battle aging, wrinkles, receding hairlines, declining morning erections, but even more stuff, satisfy their parents, satisfy their bosses, satisfy their respective parents, say goodbye to their dreams, accept existential insignificance, and so on so forth. Yes, there is a hint of sarcasm above. In many cases, people don't think they need to learn anything because they assume they already know everything. They already know everything. A very dangerous assumption that comes from frightening absence of self-awareness. So they believe that they are qualified to teach their kids anything there is to know in this world. Here's the truth: most people don't have their the horn. I believe it is gone. So here's the truth. Most parents don't have their shit figured out because nobody taught them how to think when they were growing up. In short, they are not philosophers. Perfect parents only exist in movies. Ideally, the perfect parents would be very wise, aware of child's emotional struggle as it grows, aware of the nature of the lessons to give with them every phase in child's life, equipped with the sensitivity and command over ideas to present them in a way which prevents practical ideas from being misused. Careful not to over instruct, which is a form of the controlling, thereby obstructing the natural growth of curiosity, learning, and exploration of self. Curious about the inclination of the child, aware of when to let the child get hurt and when to intervene. This means they are not simply sharing ideas and information. They are doing so while considering the impact, need, urgency, application, mood, temperament, and learning curve of the individual. For this, people would have to be fucking philosophers, which they are not, regardless of whether they have degrees in philosophy or not. Therefore, such perfect parents exist as exceptions and in movies. The dumb goal of shitty parenting. In reality, what we usually get is the widely practiced style of parenting, which is protect the child from accidentally killing themselves, getting killed, or hurting themselves. Keep them fed and loved and try to discipline them, educate them to get them an education, teach them what's right and what's wrong and wrong by distributing punishment and love. Punishment when the child messes up or pisses off the parents, and love when the child is being responsible or depending on the mood of the parent. Aspire that they will one day become capable and take care of themselves. The last point is the main focus. You should be educated, they say. What the fuck does that actually mean? Getting a degree. Now, a degree is not a bad thing. The motivation behind getting a degree, however, is what's important. For them, the motivation is a job which has three categories: good job, bad job, or great job. They want you to get a great job, therefore, the degree should come from the best institution. God damn, my kid got selected to the best school. I'm so happy. I'm an awesome parent. So, the objective of the education is not for you to become a fine thinking, but to become someone who earns well. They realize that rich people have a better life. You will be treated pretty well by your family members, the society that surrounds you, and by the members of the opposite sex. So it's not entirely unreasonable for them to want you to become a person of status. What's utterly stupid about it is that it takes care of the status part only, not the person. In the phrase a person of status, you need the development of both. Status is a socially engineered identity that tends to replace the individual identity. So, status must not dictate the person who the person is. The person must dictate what to do with the status in accordance with how they feel about that status. Take all the high achieving people who hate their jobs or profession. Despite money, achievements, and success, they are miserable doing what they do. It happens because a sense of meaning and satisfaction does not come from status. Such things are deeper and more personal than that. Your parents wanted to prepare you to be one of the best products for this world. In action, what they end up doing is prepare you technically, academically, and skill wise to be the best product for the race, like a car. The human element is barely accounted for. The goal of the most parents is for the child to become capable of achieving great success. If that goal is achieved in their minds, they are the best parents. What's fucked up about this is in case of you do achieve success, they assume that they have somehow prepared you to deal with the world as well, which is utter bullshit. Now, if you are one of those people who parents never force force you to do anything. They didn't push you to achieve success or anything of that sort. They let you do whatever you wanted. I'm not saying parents who push their kids are evil. What I am saying is it is the responsibility of parents to help you grow both into a capable working person and a capable thinking one. Did they do that? Parents are experts in acting. Learning of any kind that involves zero investment of your thinking products produces only imitation. To create ideas and better yourself, you have to take the information and apply your own mind. When parenting is not coming from parents' own mind, their own ideas and their own thinking, it becomes an imitation of whatever they have learned. What that means is they could be playing a character of what they believe a parent is. The character would be a strict wow. I have to repeat this. Parents are experts in acting. Our parents could be acting because they have no idea what to do with us, so they could have learned some sort of character. Okay, that particular character, or probably their own parents behave that way, so we should behave that way. So you become your mom when you become mom, so that's how it happens. Whew. Okay, deep. The character could be of a strict parent, or of a genius person who knows everything, or of a person who is brave and heroic. It could be anything, but when this happens, it becomes harder for the kid to find their parent approachable and figure them out. There is love, but the relationship is between the kid and a character, not the actual person. There are several reasons for parents to do this. One reason could be playing a role gives them the comfort of hiding all their personal trials and tribulations from you. Just because somebody is older doesn't mean they have figured out life. In most cases, older people are children who have aged. In most cases, older people are children who have aged. Mm-mm. Stop attaching maturity, wisdom, enlightenment to aging. He is old, hence he must be wise, is one of the stupidest notion we take for granted. Another reason is pride. In case where the parent's sole focus is on the kid becoming capable, the character they play also become the one of the experts only brilliance and exceptional performances from the kid. Okay, one that expects only brilliance and exceptional performances from the kids. In playing this character, the kid becomes a reflection of their ego. The kid's emotional and personal growth is hardly ever addressed. There is love, but it is shown in demands of accomplishment and excellence. And in this case, what is the missing is their responsibility of helping the kid become the individual they are meant to be. And some parents, what they do, even when you have achieved upon this much level, they are not satisfied. Then they are like, you know what, you have done this much, but what about this thing? Can you do this much? Are you capable of doing this much? And once you aim for that high, then they talk about this. They don't allow you to even feel that you shattered even a ceiling. You are in the race all the time. You are just climbing up and up and up and up and up, and then you find yourself alone because your parent is no more there, and then you are like, who is going to tell me what to do next? Because you had unsatisfied parent once, then you start parenting yourself as an unsatisfied parent, and then you keep on telling yourself, then you know what, you have done this much, but I'm not satisfied, you have to achieve this much. Then you do that much, and then even they are like, then you are like, yourself is going to be like, I'm still not satisfied, and then you just remain an unsatisfied person for your whole life. And that is the shittiest thing, really shittiest thing. And you can stop it just by getting detached from your parenting, from the way you were parented. Another reason why most people don't care to break out of these stupid empty shells of characters, they don't even consider that the kid's personality is getting shaped by things that hurt them, influence them and amaze them. The reason for that is they don't see them as people yet. They see them as kids who must be doing harmless, innocent kid stuff. No wonder they are shocked beyond belief when they find out their kid was doing some adult stuff. You are smoking and drinking, you are having sexual relationship already, but you are so young. The moment a kid touches the age of 13, parents should break out of their stupid characters and start looking at their kid as an inexperienced adult. What is mean what it means is they are now thinking of doing everything that adults do. In conclusion, parents is largely coming from in imitating whatever people learn from the culture in their surroundings. This basically means that whatever parents do is coming from a degree of cluelessness with regards to what to actually do. No wonder you enter adulthood completely clueless. The point of having the point of having a brain should be to minimize error, not to have to deal with it endlessly. But you were never taught the mechanism which would prepare you to protect yourselves and understand the errors that produce bothersome situations, hurt and pain. You are left to deal with all of it by yourself. As a result, you are a grown person now on your own, having to deal with the world telling you your self-worth and net worth, adjusting your self-esteem as you make sense of rejections from people, your desire, filling yourself with insecurities and ideas and comparing yourself to God knows what standards, and lastly triggering negative emotions as a response to failures, heartbreaks and denials of wishes. Yes, you are doing that through yourself. The world is doing that to you and it does that to everybody. So without wasting time, let's concern ourselves with alarming you with better means, methods and mechanism to deflect and deal with shit that has happened to you, is happening to you and will happen to you. You know you want to be special. Okay, this is our second chapter. We are already 30 minutes in this book, and this is chapter 2. And the chapter 2 says, let's be clear about something. The ideas of being special excites almost all of us to varying degrees depending upon the individual. It's perfectly normal. Be honest. You know you have fantasized about standing out in certain situations, played and replayed different scenarios of the same meeting interactions in your mind with you as the center of attention and master of the perfect dialogue. You have imagined scenarios in which you are born as somebody blessed with what you believe will make you fulfilled. You have wished that one day everybody around you will tell you that you are amazing and treat you like you are amazing, and you have daydreamed about people you want to impress, please, attract instinctively, wanting to be your friend and lover after meeting you because you are so damn impressive. Lastly, who hasn't dreamt about having millions of dollars? This is how you become special. Okay. According to you, specialness is being born, being told you are special, being treated like you are special, and being rich. Unfortunately, all of that has nothing to do with specialness. Let's first define what specialness is. During childhood, there are chances you may have experienced one of these three things. You were told you are special. Let's just stop a little bit here. Hi there, I'm back. So let's start it. Oh, where were we? According to you, Specialness is being born special, being told you are special, being treated like you are special, and being rich. Unfortunately, all of that has nothing to do with specialness. Let's first define that specialness, what specialness is. During your childhood, there are chances you may have experienced one of these three things. You were told you are special, you were told you are not special. 3. There was no mention of you being special or unspecial at all. If you were told by your parents that you are special, kindly rinse your mind of that idea immediately. If you were told you are not special, then no parents are geniuses. That too is completely wrong. Lastly, if there was no mention of specialness in your household, chances are you are still seeking it. And since we all of us are seeking it in either assuming if I do this, it will make me special, or wish if only I had this, I would have been special. You need to understand that specialness is earned. If you were asked what were the moments in which you felt special, you might think of them when people laughed at your joke, applauded some efforts, or when your post on social media got more likes than usual. That would be much closer to the truth or the generation today. Such movements contain all elements of modeling acceptance and approval from others, not of specialness. Okay, we are 20 pages in, guys. Here's a very simple example of specialness. I felt it when I achieved that. That is the anything that created a considerable amount of self-belief in you and made you believe for the first time that you are capable. We all assumes we are capable because nobody would like to believe otherwise. But it remains theoretical until you have achieved something that not only becomes a reference point for your future for yourself in the future. I was able to achieve this. This is who I am. But also proves to yourself that you have what it takes to be capable. I believe I can achieve anything I put my mind to. Specialness is the badge of realization you earn. It may seem very simple to you, but this thinking can change the course of your life. Your any achievement dictates you have created or mastered something. This means that not only did you gain in terms of knowledge, but you build habits of discipline, hard work, prioritizing, and focusing habits that will serve you in almost all aspects of life. On top of that, achievements create immense self belief. I can do this because I have done it before, in an amazing thought to have at the back of your mind, guiding you. Also achievements are rewarded with more opportunities and give you status in the eye of society. Now imagine setting up this in the mind of a child. Instead of telling them out of bias that they are special, or out of spite that they are not mentioning it at all is equally bad. It as simple avoid as it simply avoids addressing a want already growing inside the mind of that person. No matter what you tell them, they will at some point chase after the need to feel special. If you can give it a definition, redirect it, and set them up to earn what they already want, you will have saved them years of confusion, embarrassment, self-imposed feelings of inferiority, foolish pursuits, and a focus on weakness. You will instead have given them an attitude that will serve them for lifetime. However, specialness cannot be achieved for life from a single event. It has the property of very soon becoming a thing of the past. A badge earned at the 15 decorates the honor you earn at the age of 15 only, not 20 or 25. To feel special, you ought to be ready and feel ready for all the battles, not just one. Also, achievements does not necessarily mean trophies won in tournaments or contests. Achievements can be personal as well. For example, learning a new language, which has the same consequences of something won on the stage. It will give you knowledge, self belief, useful habits. It will create opportunities and give you status in the eyes of the people. Any achievement, personal or public, is a thing of uniqueness. Therefore, making a sandwich or an omelette is not considered as an achievement. Although some may beg to differ for the sake of trolling, even the act of making sandwiches or omelets every day for the rest of your life cannot be considered an achievement unless you have unless you have the written testimony of the world class sandwich experts that your sandwich is way better than the any sandwich made elsewhere, in which case your sandwich shall be referred to as the sandwich, not a sandwich, and will be inducted as an achievement. This is how you don't become special. You need to make it completely clear in your mind that your others recognizing you, giving you attention, a moment of their time, is not you being treated as somebody special. You translate that into specialness because you hardly ever feel good about yourself. This means you have never consciously devised a way to make yourself feel better. It's the burden of feeling inadequate in your mind that makes normal act of kindness from others seems like special acts, which they are not. Guys say you are special to girls they are trying to have sex with. The point is, if you rely on others to feel special, then that may become the norm in your life, then a habit, and after that, a crippling need. Appreciate their kindness, of course, in cases where there was no motive behind the words, and if there was one, you can appreciate the sentiment, like take inspiration from it if it's work related to, and be aware of their motives. Whatever the case may be, the right to feel special must be earned and must only be yours to give. If it shouldn't belong to others, because the world might not share their opinion. Having practical expectations from the world will make you more self-reliant and less reliant on the good words of the other. This will save you from constantly trying to please people and feeling miserable when you fail. If you need somebody to tell you that you are special, then you have not done anything to earn it in your own mind. Others can never make you feel special for long. There are people who, despite having achieved, learned, and progressed a lot in their life, have no sense of specialness in their mind. It happens because they did it all to prove something to somebody. It could be their parents, society, teachers. It was fulfilled by pressure, competition, culture, and everything else but their own selves. Their lives to this game function on the principle that the achievements and better performances are means to please those whom they have deemed gods. If they are pleased by me, then I am special. This is how their life works. Whatever I do to prove to the world that I can do it, basically to be accepted by the world. Soon afterwards, the world is replaced by people who become the ideal models of behavior and performances, models you up to. Therefore, whatever I do, I must do it better to impress them. The idea then becomes to please them until you become them, and they have their blessings and assurance that you have become what they would like you to be. If you are living this life, flip the script, which means whatever I do it for myself because I want to prove myself I can do it. Recognizing that whatever you do in turn impacts the world, because whatever I do impacts the world, I shall must become better so I can impact the world for the better. Those who hold prizes and positions and power are source to learn from and nothing else. You know nothing about their lives except for their abilities. Admire the fact that they have their loose abilities and leave it at that. When they appreciate you, single you out, congratulate you, welcome your efforts, and congratulate your efforts, you must understand that it is normal, deserved reaction to your praiseworthy actions, not acts of benevolence from higher beings. You can appreciate that treatment and make sure to in return to turn pass on it on to others. But if you label it to as something as make you special, then that high of feelings becomes dependent on the pat on the back, a compliment, a word of admiration to feel good about yourself. By doing that, you are silently setting yourself up to be crushed mentally. The day you hear the opposite of those words, the day it's not a pat on the back, but a backhanded comment, not a compliment, but an unpleasant remark, not a word of admiration, but a rejection of your performance. This is a relationship between a master and a servant, neither of whom is special or without the other. The master relies on the servant's presence for his special status, the servant on the master's word of kindness. Okay. So he is comparing us when we depend on other people for appreciation, that we have a master servant relationship. That's harsh, but he already told us this is the rudest book ever. Guys, again, we are 45 minutes in, and the book is really, really good. The rudest book ever. You should definitely give it a shot, and you should definitely read it. It will give you something. It's not like all the other self-help books. It is something different, but again, it has an innate nature in it which makes you read more and makes you think, okay, let me read the other paragraph next. You are not going to be sitting and, okay, I have read this much of the books, I'm 20 pages and let me take a break. That's not going to happen with this book. You are going to read a lot of it. I think you will be able to, a lot, book readers will be able to finish this book in one sitting. It is that good. It is that good. Okay. The truth about most people who have achieved a lot but depend on the praise of others to feel special is you are already special. Where I was. The truth about most people who have achieved a lot but depend on the praise of others to feel special is you are already special. Nobody ever taught you to think from this point of view. Nobody taught you what specialness actually is. Nobody taught the same to those who haven't achieved much either. Specialness is essence in essence does not require anybody but the individual. One can simply close their eyes and make and ask themselves, why am I special? Why have I done what have I done in my life? And get a clear answer. In case you feel dissatisfied, then you have the option to earn it. Nobody gives it to you. You have to take it. But that's the hard point. That's the hard part. Earning it. It is to escape from the answers. What we look for specialness in love, appreciative comments, and attention through social media or friends. It is because we know we aren't special in our own eyes that we at least want to be told by others that we are in theirs. Once you realize that your specialness is taken away from the approval and acceptance of the others, handed exclusively to the self. Specialness then becomes a collection of skills and feeling special in the sensation felt of upgrading a life and having mastered a skill. Okay. Once you realize we know we aren't special in our own eyes, that we at least want to be told by others that we are in theirs. Okay, so you are not when you are not special in your own eyes, you seek specialness from other people, that they should appreciate your specialness and they should tell you that you are very special and they should talk about your specialness. Once you realize this, your specialness is taken away from the approval and acceptance of others and handed exclusively to the self. Specialness then becomes a collection of skills, and feeling special is the sensation felt on upgrading in life after having mastered a skill. So he is saying basically what is going to happen every time you are going to upgrade a skill in yourself, you are going to feel special because you are going to feel okay, I can do this, and you are showing it to yourself that you are able to achieve something, that you are capable of learning a language, that you are capable of running a marathon, that you are capable of climbing a mountain. So you are able to show all of that to yourself, and that is going to make you special in your own eyes. So stop seeking specialness from other people, stop seeking appreciation from other people, stop pleasing other people. You have to please yourself, and that's all you have to do. You should not please other people. That's what this book is saying again and again. So we started from parenting, that sometimes your parents fucked up, and a lot of parents are fucking it up, and because a lot of us are bad products, this book assumes that. He's not saying we all are, but there's an assumption that a lot of us are bad products. There's an assumption about it, so we have to consider that, because somewhere we are not perfect. Nobody among us can say that we are perfect. So it started with that, and then it's talking about how you can turn your specialness. Somewhere the book is parenting you. You're parenting yourself throughout this book. So then what rejections do to us? Okay. Rejections are part of a life. Obviously they are part of a life. Those who don't think rejections are not part of a life, they should reconsider that thing. Rejections are part of a life. You are going to get rejected by those you desire. You will not always get a fair shot in the competition. Okay. People are motivated by various factors to make decisions to the detriment of your happiness or prosperity. The point is, on many occasions, it won't have anything to do with you. This is big. This is a big world we live in, with a lot of people. You are just one of them, and sadly, the world doesn't revolve around you, which kinda leaves you with a very bad odds. Now, because we know rejections are part of life and happens every single day to somebody, we need to have a way of looking at rejections that helps us overcome them easily and not be scared into a little hole by them. Scared into a little hole by them. Our first foundation principle is rejections are normal. Okay, it might be very late for you to start seeing it in this way, because you may have already spent a lot of years being psychologically mauled by rejections, failures, and losses. Don't worry, we will talk about everything. For now, start rewriting your perceptions of rejections of any kind with these three words: rejections are normal. Rejections are commonly found species of Asian beasts that get everyone in all fields of life. As mentioned before, it may have nothing to do with you when it happens, because you are a self-important, self-loving son of a gun, you think from your ego instead of your rational mind and make it all about yourself. You act as if you are the only one it has happened to. Therefore, once again, rejections are normal. Start seeing it this way, they happen to everybody. So, because we are not able to absorb reactions the way we should, rejections or failures or losses, they all are the same. We should be able to absorb them exactly what they are, what exactly they mean. They are just a reaction from somebody, they are just a reaction, there's nothing more to them. So the more you're going to think like that they are just a reaction, that I just failed this time, that I'm just getting a rejection from this particular person. I was actually going through a sales video. I was learning how to do sales for some company at that point. And in that particular video, that particular person was giving a live video, and I actually asked him a question that what exactly, how to deal with rejections. Every time you go up to a client and that particular client is rejecting your pitch for the particular product, then how exactly you will deal, if especially when you are doing a consultant role. Then that particular person said that, what, Abhilasha, do not mind rejections. If one person has rejected you, he is going to tell what exactly he is rejecting in your script. So try to analyze rejection. The more you will be able to analyze rejection, the more you will be minimizing your chances of getting rejected. The more you will be able to get yourself better. So that's how it happens in life as well. If you're getting rejected from one girl, you can see, okay, why exactly that particular person is rejecting me. For example, they say that you are not my type, then you understand the fact, okay, there are types, and I am going to be the type for somebody going to be into the short guys, so I might be for somebody who is into short people. So let me approach that particular person, right? So it's all about chances, guys. It's all about chances. So you have to take chances, and that's how you can get over rejections. And but I have to say this, you have to analyze your rejections as well. You should analyze your rejections, and then you should get detached from them. It's just a reaction from somebody that you are getting. There's nothing more to it. The failures are also some sort of reactions. There's nothing more to them. Although rejections continue throughout our lifetime, they tend to have a brutal effect in the initial years, a time when you are a little too passionate, too hopeful, and too little entitled. It might have been in your early years of schooling when a teacher you really wanted to be noticed but somehow always moved past you as if you were unwanted at. Or it could have been a person you liked, or a person with authority or charisma. The sensation felt from that experience was, am I invisible to them? Your mind is unable to come up with any rational explanation for such behavior from others, and you are too embarrassed to open up to your parents about it. In case you do, chances are they see it as an opportunity to fill your mind with complete nonsense. Something is wrong with that person for not realizing how great you are, so screw that person for not seeing that. Of course, your perception can't agree with screw them. It goes in direct contradiction to the fact that you like them and wish to be liked by them in return. You have given them value in your mind. Therefore, what you end up feeling in the absence of a sensible explanation for what is happening is, something is wrong with me. As time goes by, these sensations doubles, triple, and start to multiply. You haven't been selected for a school actively, or debate, a play, a sport team. The cool senior students don't seem to take a shine to you, and most devastating of all, your crush, the really pretty one or the popular one, those whom everybody seems to be interested in and talks about, doesn't notice you at all either, even though you are crushing it in the contest of the staring at them. That's when the voice starts to become louder. Maybe something is wrong with me. From this, the conclusion your underdeveloped brain draws, am I not special? As discussed earlier, you haven't the slightest clue of what being special means. There are the development years for the perception and personality of a person, and the only tool at hand is an underdeveloped brain. Without guidance and response to being rejected is rarely going to mature. A heartbreak, a opportunity lost, isolation may make you feel it the end of the world. So depending on your fearlessness and strength, weakness, may you make a decision of what to do with the voice saying, I am not special. In short, you get screwed because you haven't been told that rejections are fucking normal, mate. Your mind doesn't really know how to process emotions productively either. The result could be really disastrous. because your mind hasn't processed it fully, the result could have been really, really bad when you are rejected for the first time, or the second time, or the third time. But the more you are going to analyze, okay, it's completely fine. I'm going to get rejected. That's the best gonna happen. I will try somebody else. But you have to analyze your rejections, and you have to learn how to get detached from your rejections. That is something that you should learn, guys. And our time is up. We are 59 minutes in, and the book is great, the rudest book is ever. If you are in your teens, you should definitely buy this book, and you should definitely read this book. It is for you guys. And what else? Do put in comment section when you were rejected. Let's make it about that. Let's make it really normal. If Shwetabh Gangwar is saying rejections are normal, let's make them normal. I'm gonna write a story in the comment section that when I was rejected by a very beautiful person that I was really liking. I will tell you the whole story in the comment section. And in return, if you want, you can put your own story, and then we can make this rejections thing normal. That's it. That was my time, guys. I hope you had a great watch time. Okay, you had a great watch time, and that was it. I gave this book 5 star, 5 on 5. Do read. See ya.